Hello, welcome to White Davy Gardening and Worm Farm. Today we're going to be discussing more about worm farming and types of commercial worm bins that are available on the market. So it's good to have you all here on the live today. For some, they totally enjoy worm farming. They like the process of taking care of the worms. They like to watch their worm grow. They like to watch the worm population grow. They like to be able to harvest the castings and have it to use in their gardens. Some are contemplating starting a worm farm, and they may be looking for additional information on how to get started. Others may simply worm farm simply for the benefits that they get from it, while others may like the idea of worm farming but do not want to handle worms, and for that reason they may choose to just buy the worm castings as opposed to raising their own worms. Whichever category you fall into, thank you for being here on the live. Hi Cece. Hi Mom. Hi Han White. We are calling baby sister. Oh, thank you. I will overlook you calling me baby since, as you say, I'm beautiful. Okay. Right. So thank you all for being here. Now, why should you choose worm farming over regular composting? Regular composting is good. It has similar benefits to that of worm castings, but of course, worm castings do have more benefits. But one of the reasons, apart from just the benefits of it, is the time that it takes for you to have compost or vermicompost to use in your garden. So, as we mentioned in Monday's live, it can take anything from 3 months to 2 years for your compost to be produced. With worm castings, yes, initially it will take 3 to 6 months, depending on the amount of worms that you're starting with and the amount of food scraps that you're feeding your worms. So initially it will take that 3 to 6 months for you to be able to harvest castings. But once that process has begun, then pretty much every month you are able to harvest castings, or every 2 months you may be able to harvest castings. So this is one big reason why worm castings are going vermicompost as opposed to regular compost is advantageous. This is also the reason why I got into worm castings, into worm farming in the first place, because when I first started composting, I'm always looking for ways to improve or to increase the rate at which I'm able to harvest compost. And that is how I stumbled upon worm casting or worm farming, because prior to that, I did not really know anything at all that there was even something called worm farming. But after doing research on how I can improve with my compost or the speed of which I gain compost, then here I am worm farming, and I would recommend it to anyone who is contemplating it. So let's see. And White says, I made worm tea and fed my herb box and my 2 raised beds yesterday. Nice. Now your plant should be very happy. So let me know how the worm tea works. Did you put it on the root of the plant, or did you put it from the foliage and the root of the plants? Okay, so can you use wood ash in your worm farm? Yes, you can actually use wood ash in your worm farm. The worms will eat it, but the purpose of the wood ash is not necessarily to feed the worms, But wood ash neutralizes acid in your worm bins. So if you have wood ash, then feel free to add it to your worm bin. Let's see, and why it says, yes, they are. Okay, they're happy. Good. Okay, so you watered both the foliage and the root. That's good. So let me know how the worm tea works if you are having problems with aphids, if it helps with those as well. Hi, Helpy. Now, can you put compost worms in your garden? Sure, you can. They don't have to be in a compost bin. In fact, for people who don't have time to look after worms, even though worms don't really require a lot of care, if you don't have time to look after worms, then putting them in your garden is the best option for you. You might not have as much worms as those who actually have worms in their worm bin, but you can put them in your garden. But you would need to keep in mind a few things. If you're going to be putting worms in your garden, you need to make sure that you have enough organic matter covering your garden, because one, the worms are going to feed on the organic matter that is in your garden, and two, the worms need moisture, and that organic matter is going to hold moisture. So you need to make sure that you have enough organic matter all year round in your garden. Now, depending on the type of compost worms and the climatic condition that you have, some of your worms may die in the winter, or if the time is excessively hot, some of your worms may die. However, when worms realize that they are going to die, they usually start laying a lot of cocoons so that they can preserve their population. So even though most of your worms may die in winter or extremely hot conditions, the worms or the cocoons, when the condition is right, so when the temperature is right and the moisture content is right, then those cocoons will hatch and restart your worm population. So yes, you can add worms to your garden. And it doesn't really matter whether or not your garden is container based, raised bed based, or if it is just in the ground, whatever means you have of growing your garden, you can put worms in there. In fact, if you do container gardening and you're using worm castings in your garden, it's not uncommon for you to find compost worms that have hatched from cocoons that are in the worm casting. So whatever means you have, you can add worms to it. Okay. Now, how can you help worms to process the food in your worm bin so that you can have a good harvest? As we mentioned before, it can take anything for beginners. It can take anything from 3 to 6 months for you to be able to harvest your worms. And after that, you'll be able to harvest not worms, but castings. You should be able to harvest castings every month or every couple of months. When you see that your casting has reached the stage where it is almost ready for harvesting, oh, hi, Kiki Soto. Yeah, so when you see that your casting reached the stage where it is almost ready for harvesting, stop feeding the worm bin and let the worm process the additional food scraps that is, or the remaining food scraps that is in the bin. After they have gone through most of the remaining food scraps in the bin to the point where you're satisfied, then you want to feed one side of your bin and allow time for those worms to migrate over to the new food scraps. So that is how you can help the worms to process most of the material that is in your bin. Doing so is beneficial for more than one thing, because one, you get more castings to use, and it also reduces the amount of sifting that you have to do, especially if you're feeding your worms material that is pretty soft or pretty easy to break down. Yes, so if you're feeding your worms material that is easy to break down, then definitely you won't have to do any sifting or very little sifting. If you are not selling your castings, however, you don't necessarily have to sift your castings when you harvest it, unless, of course, you really enjoy looking at that nice, refined, pure worm castings. Okay, so whether your worm bin is indoors or outdoors, why do worms gather on the lid of your bin when it rains? Worms can sense changes in barometric pressure and they will respond accordingly. Also, when it rains, there is usually more moisture in the air, and because it is overcast, so it's not bright and sunny. As you know, worms do not like bright lights, they prefer to be in the dark. And this is mostly because light paralyzes them, so they don't like the light, they will shy away from it. When the time is rainy and overcast, that bright light sunlight is not there anymore. Plus, worms need moisture. So, because of that, whenever it rains, it will simulate an environment similar to the condition that worms prefer. So for that reason, worms will feel more comfortable to come out and explore, which is why you will see them climbing up the sides of your bin or on the lid of your bin when it rains, because they are more in their comfort zone. However, if their bin is in a location where the rainwater is going to get in, that could be also one reason why you will see them on the lid. Because if your bin has too much moisture, even though they require moisture to breathe, if the bin has too much moisture, then they won't be able to breathe properly. So they will try to escape from your bin. Now, what if you are going on a holiday for maybe a few weeks or a month? Would it be okay to leave your worm bin? Would your worms be in danger? Well, that depends. Worms are very. Oh, hi, Nature BD. Yes. Worms can tolerate a bit of dryness in their bin. They can go a little while without food scraps in their bin. There is usually some amount of food scraps that is left unprocessed that the worms can feed on. However, if you know that you're going to be leaving for as long as a month, then it would be a good idea to add a bit more moisture, because you can always add a little more moisture than what is recommended to the bin. You just don't want to overdo it with the moisture, but you can add a little extra moisture to the bin, and you want to add more food than you would normally leave for your worms. I'm doing fine, my dear. How are you? Yes, so you want to add a little excess moisture and a little more food than you would normally do. However, if you're going to be adding more food scraps than usual, then you might want to consider adding more carbon-based food than nitrogen-based foods. So your browns, you want to add more of that rather than your greens. And the reason is, depending on the amount of worms that you have, you don't want to have so much food scraps in there that it starts to go bad. And especially since you're not going to be around to control whatever goes wrong in the bin if you had too much of the nitrogen based food scraps. So your shredded leaves and your papers and stuff like that is a better option to add more of. You always stay connected. Okay. Yes, so you can leave your bin for 1 month and know that the bin will be okay. Sometimes when you get back, you might find that the bin is a little bit on the drier side and some of the food scraps are the supply of food is low, but it should be enough to tie them over until you get back. Hi, Russell. He says, for me, 9 out of 10 times when the worms crawl up the sides or on the lid, it is because of lack of oxygen caused by off gas from previous feeding. Okay, that is good information for our viewers who are worm farming for the first time. Thanks for sharing. Yes. Okay, so what can you do if there are ants in your worm bin? You can add cinnamon powder or cayenne powder to the bin because this will repel the ants from your worm bin. If your bin is a little bit too dry, then that may cause ants to feel comfortable enough to come into your worm bin to take food back to their colony. If you're looking to go further than just simply repelling them from your bin, if you want to exterminate them, then you can use cornmeal because, as I mentioned in previous videos and live discussion, ants actually love cornmeal and they will come to your bin to eat the cornmeal, but then when they eat it, then it will result in them dying. So you can use cornmeal to exterminate them. So you've just started your worm bin and you're anxious to see it grow. You see a lot of little white worms in your worm bins. Are these hatchlings? Most likely they are potworms. But potworms are not harmful to your bin, but their presence indicate that your bin is either too moist or too acidic. So if you're new to worm farming and you're seeing a lot of tiny white worms in your bin, then the chances are that you should check your bin to see whether or not it is too acidic or too moist because you may have potworms. Urban Kiki says, cornmeal it is. Last time I turned my compost, there were so many ants. Yes, they definitely love the compost bin because they have endless amount of food supply there. And of course, sometimes they might even make the nest in your compost bin. Other times they will just simply come and collect the food scraps and take it back to their colony. But yes, the cornmeal works pretty well. The only thing with using the cornmeal is that they actually love the cornmeal. Ants love anything that is sugary, but they also love cornmeal. I don't know what it is about the cornmeal that they like, but they love the cornmeal. And so when you use it, a lot of people will complain that they are seeing more ants rather than less ants when they use the cornmeal. But we know the nature of ants where once they find something good, they're going to take it back to their colony and bring more workers to collect more. So the cornmeal will actually attract more of the ants. But then when they come, they will take the cornmeal, they will eat, and they will eventually die. So yes, it attracts more eventually, but in the end, it will help to get rid of more of those ants. Hi, Leafy Wiggy. Uh, Urban girl. Okay. Yes. So, what happens when worms? What happens to worms when there isn't enough moisture in the worm bin? We may all be aware of the fact that worms breathe through their skin, and they need moisture in order to do so because it allows dissolved oxygen to pass through their skin and into their bloodstream. Now, when their environment is too dry, then the worms will have to secrete liquid from their bodies in order to moisten their skin so they can keep breathing. This process, however, makes the worms very weak And if this dryness is prolonged and they have to keep using moisture from their bodies to moisten their skin, then it will result in them dying eventually. So it's a good idea to keep your bin as moist as you can. And it is better to have your bin being a little bit too moist than too dry. Now, in last week discussion, we spoke about the ideal temperatures for worms. We spoke about the various types of worms and the temperatures that they can tolerate. Oh, just saying hi. Okay. Yes, and the temperature that they can tolerate. But while there are temperature ranges that they can tolerate, there are actually temperatures that is ideal for them. So for worms, the ideal temperature, whether they be red wigglers, African night crawlers, or others, the ideal temperature for worms is between 16 and 27 degrees Celsius, which is about 60.8 to 80.6 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is the temperature at which they perform best. Worm cocoons can survive freezing temperature, but what happens if their cocoons are exposed to too much heat? Will it survive? Worm cocoons, while they can survive freezing temperatures, they cannot survive very hot temperatures. And so if we have worm bins, we want to keep it more on the cooler side rather than on the hotter side. Now, what is the ideal moisture content for your worm bin? The ideal moisture content is between 80 and 90%. When the moisture level is consistent within this category and the temperature is ideal, your worms will produce at their best. So not only will they produce more castings because they're going to be comfortable enough to just keep on feeding, but they will also reproduce at their best. So 80 to 90 percent. And if you want to know if your moisture content is good enough, you can always test it with your hand by squeezing the content of your bin and watching to see if only a few drops of moisture will fall, in which case the moisture content is ideal and you want to maintain that content. Or you can always get a moisture tester and use it to ensure that the moisture content in your bin is consistent. Let's see. See you later. Keep sharing your genius. Okay, take care, my uh, Kiki. See you later. Now, let's talk a bit about commercial worm bin, especially those who are thinking of starting a worm farm for the first time. And some of you may think of making your own, or some of you may think of purchasing worm farm. Now, what are some types of commercial worm bins that you can get and how much do they cost? So I'm just going to give you just a brief review on or a brief description of some of the commercial worm bins that you can get out there. There is the hungry bin. It is semi-conical in shape, so it's shaped something like that, but it is square on the surface. It comes on wheels. It has a catchment tray and it has a top on it as well, so you can drain off the leachate from your worm bin. It is pretty expensive though because it costs roughly $400. The Worm Factory basic kit, that one can house, they say, anything between 8 and 12,000 worms. It has a leachate collector tray and a spigot to drain off the leachate. It can be expanded up to 6 trays, and you can purchase the trays individually. The basic kit costs $135. The trays, individual trays, cost roughly $20. So you can purchase as many trays as you want, up to 6 for one of these bins. The other one, I'm not sure how they pronounce the name, because it sounds similar to that supplement Herbalife. So I don't know if they call it Herb Alive or Herbalife. I don't know, but yes, that's how it's. So the Herbalife Worm Farm, it comes with 2 trays, 1 grill. It comes with a garden trowel and a multifunctional measuring vessel. It also has a spigot at the bottom so that you can drain off your leachate. Now, this one costs $280, and each of the trays cost around $30, and the grill costs $15. A lot of people who use this like to purchase an additional grill just in case something goes wrong with the first one. And then there is the urban worm bag. This is a flow-through system that is made of a bag that is set up on a stand, and the bottom of the bag is capped. The cap is removed whenever you're ready to harvest your casting, and you would harvest the casting from the bottom of the bag. And it is made of a breathable, water-resistant fabric, and it costs roughly $130. So these are some of the commercial type of compost bins that are readily available out there, but as you may notice, none of them is cheap. So I still prefer to use my homemade system than the store-bought one, because they're a whole lot cheaper. The price that you pay for even the cheapest one of these that I mentioned, you could actually set up 5 worm bins for yourself and purchase your worms and still have a little bit of change remaining. So for that reason, I prefer to use the homemade type. Not to mention that the homemade type provides far more space in the bin. The advantage of these though is that they're smaller. Each of the trays is a lot smaller, so lifting and handling it is not very difficult because they don't really weigh too much, depending on whether they're the tray varieties anyway, because the urban worm bag is not a tray, does not come with tray, and the the hungry bin does not come with trays. So I don't really know what the advantage is for the urban worm bag. Because it is a flow-through system, it is a lot easier to harvest your castings, because you're going to be feeding the bin, and when you're feeding at the bottom, the worms will gradually migrate up. It is the same thing with those that are tray based, because you feed the lower bin and the worms migrate up. When they finish processing what is in the trays below, they move upwards to the next tray, and you just keep repeating the process. Hi, Makilahe. Right, so these are some of the commercial worm bags or worm bins that are available, but they are expensive. In my region, I can get a 76-liter tote for the price has gone up, so it will be roughly $9 with taxes now. I get 2 of those, and I have a worm bin set up. So I like to go with this method. The only thing is, if those bins get full with food scraps and worm castings, lifting them can be pretty heavy. but I still rather it because I have more space in them for my worms to play around, which means that it's more likely that the worms are going to be increasing their population because they have a lot of space. So have any of you ever used any of these commercial type worm bins? And if so, what type have you used? Roxa says, I really like your double tiered outdoor worm bin. That one looks like it must be awesome at peak performance. Yes, it actually does pretty well. The top one is a flow through system, and the bottom one is I use horizontal migration to harvest that one. But yeah, they work pretty well. I wanted to make it into a three tiered system, but I decided not to because it would be a bit awkward trying to get up to the third layer. So I decided to just stick with the two because even sometimes the top layer, I think maybe I put it a little bit too high. I should have lowered it even 6 inches more, but it works pretty well. I still haven't set up a proper wrench system on it yet. I have a little makeshift one that I made on it that I have never really used. Yes, the only disadvantage of that system that I have there is that my growing time or the warm weather is too short, so I've never really seen the bin operating at optimum because it's only 4 months out of the year that I can use it. It would be nice if I was able to use it all year round and see how well it performs, but for the time that I have, it actually performs okay. But I tend to find a lot of red wigglers every year around the bin outside because in the bottom bin, the worms sometimes will, when I'm harvesting it for the winter or the fall, some of the worms can go into little crevices and hide in there. And when they go in those crevices and hide, you can't get them out. So when spring comes around every year, you can find tons of worms because they stay there and reproduce. You can find tons of worms and eggs outside in the soil around the bin. Yes. Hopefully, if I move somewhere else where I have nice warmer weather for longer, I will be able to set up something similar and see how well it performs. Yes, so have any of you ever used any of these commercial worm bins? And if so, what type? I've never really had any experience with any of them, so I don't know what they are like. I've seen videos of them, and those who purchase them, some people will like them, some will not. Some people are willing to try more than one types of these commercial bins. So I would like to know what these bins are like. What are the benefits? What are the disadvantages and stuff like that, especially for to have such information to share with people who tend to ask about them because I've never used them, so I have nothing to say about them. So Helpy says, I have not. My bins are DIY. I hear good things about the urban worm bags. Oh, okay. So what are some of the things you've heard about the urban worm bag? I've heard people ask about the urban worm bags. They want to know if the if everything won't settle in the bottom of the bag because of the way it is shaped, but it should work pretty fine because it's not really much different from other types of worm bins, especially if you are one who surface feed your worm bin. See, and White says, no, I have two 180-liter garden storage container. Okay, yes, that's what you raise your worms in. Yes. So, yeah, as I heard, I've also heard that the urban worm bag is not bad. And a lot of people like it because of the ease with which they can access their worm castings. LP says, I should have said I've seen good things. Hello, hello. I've seen some videos and I like how it looks and operates. I like the idea of breathable bag as opposed to the trays. And Leafy Wiggy says, I use a 7-inch food grade meat tub. Oh, okay. LP says, all the commercial bins do seem more expensive than I'm willing to spend. Exactly. That is how I feel about it too. They are too expensive for me, that is. Others, it's all up to everybody's preference what they're going to use, but I can't see myself spending $400 to buy one worm bin, and especially if I want more than one worm bin, because what if my worm population grow to the point where I need to expand or get another bin? Am I going to have to find another $130 or $400 to buy another worm bin? I don't know. Based on the amount of castings that can produce in a year, is it really worth it to spend? But then it's not as if the bin is going to last only a year. So, but yeah, I'm not willing. I'm not willing to spend that amount of money to buy to buy that worm bin. In fact, for the type of setup that I am now using, where I'm using the cement mixing trays to raise my worms in, I pay $7 before tax for one of those bins. So if I had tax into that, I am looking at about 45 bins that I could have purchased for the price of one of those hungry bins. So for that reason, no, I can't see myself spending that amount of money, but then it does have its advantages in the sense of the way it is set up. You can store it in, you just need a small amount of space to store most of these types of bin, and your fruit flies won't get in so easily and stuff like that. So for those reasons, but I don't know, call me cheap if you want, but I will not be spending so much for those bins. LP says, I agree with you. I want to expand my worm farming and it will cost me maybe $10 to get another storage tote. Yeah. You guys probably know by now that I am very frugal when it comes to spending. It's not that I'm cheap, it's just that I don't see the need for it and I don't even have the resources to. I don't have that kind of resource to buy one worm bin for 100 and something dollars. But yeah, to me it makes very little sense, but to someone else it might means the world to them. LB says, yes, good point. Thanks for bringing that up. I like that the urban worm bag can be zipped closed. Yes, that is also a pretty good feature of it. And the zip I heard is made from really good material. It won't rust or break down quite easily. So that is another good feature of the urban worm bags. But because I have not had any interest in purchasing any of these, so because of that, I've never really done a review on them to see how people who have used them feel about them, what are the negatives and the positive of them. So I've never done a review on it. And then by now, you guys should know that I'm someone who likes to make things. I'm always making stuff. So even something as simple as the worm bin, I enjoy making it myself. So I don't see myself going out to buy it. Even if it was cheap as what I can make it for, I'd still be making it. That's something I have to thank my parents for. They're always pretty handy, especially my mom. My mom is very creative. She goes to her bed at night and she gets up and she says, "Okay, I have an idea." And then my dad would put the idea into action and come up and expand on it. So my parents, they're always creating new stuff, always working with their hands. So because of that, all of us as kids tend to be that way because our parents, they always taught us the things that they know, the things that they learn, the things that they make, they show us how to do it. So because of that, as kids, we grew up learning quite a lot. So even if there are things that we haven't seen them doing, because of that creative tendency, a lot of times we can come up with new ideas on our own. So mom, you're on the live, so thank you for that. Let's see. LP says that awesome. Your parents sounds wonderful. Oh, smart. They taught you all. Yes, I'm so thankful for that because I've been able to save a lot of times when there are things that I could not normally afford because of this creative background, then a lot of time I'm able to have things that I would not be able to purchase otherwise. So I'm grateful for such a background. Russell says, just to be a little critical, every time I see a herban bag or vermi bag unzip, I see flying insects. Turn me off. Yeah, I can understand that nobody wants to see flying insects all over the place. I know these days because I fed my worms in, what was that? January. I fed my worms some food scraps, and then my 55-gallon European nightcrawler bin that is in my garden, I fed that food scraps, and because of the large holes in it that I haven't covered yet, so the fruit flies get in there, and every time I go near the bin, I'm just turned off by it. I still haven't finished putting that covers covers on the holes of that bin yet. I need to get that done before sometime next week. But yes, I know what you mean when you say those flying insects is a big turn off. They definitely are. Let's see. Mom says you're welcome every time. Hi, Newark Gardner. I'm doing okay. How are you? I haven't seen you in a while. How is your garden going? I'm starting to have some fun in my garden. I can actually put my cool weather crops outdoors now. So I'm quite excited. I just put some corns to soak this morning because I'm going to be soaking them overnight and see. I'm going to try to start them indoors. I can't start them yet outdoors, it's too cold. So I'm going to start them indoors, and in the next 3 weeks, well, less than 3 weeks, I'll be able to put them outdoors. So that is why I'm actually soaking them first so that I can get them to start germinating sooner rather than later. Hopefully, by the first week in June, I'll be able to put them outdoors. So, my garden, I'm pretty excited about what's coming. I'm a bit disappointed today, though, because yesterday was nice. I brought most of my plants outdoors and put them in the greenhouse. But then today, it's a similar temperature to yesterday, but it is overcast. And because of that, it is cooler, even though the temperature is the same. And it's very windy, 41-kilometer wind, so I don't want to put anything out. But I was looking forward to not having to use any more grow lights, yes, for the rest of the season. But it seems I'm not done with the grow lights just yet. Okay, your garden is doing good. Okay, everything is growing. Okay, nice, nice. I haven't seen any videos from you recently, New Art Gardener. Still waiting on those videos. See, Joyce White, are you still coming up with projects? No, you've got big kids who can make them for you. I don't think she would want us to make them for her. She still has to keep busy making stuff. If you take that away from her, we'll probably be going to her funeral. So I think, yeah, we could help her with stuff, but I don't think you could take that away from her. She'd have to be making stuff still. Oh, you're so close to me, Leafy Wiggy, but it is nice and sunny where you are. Yeah, I don't know. It is overcast. Doesn't seem as if it is going to change. I hope it doesn't rain because I have a project that I have to take care of outdoors, and it's not one that I can put off because I have a house that I'm changing the siding on, and I've been putting it off for a few days now, so I can't put it off any longer. Let's see, Russell. Okay, LP says, Russell, I have seen the bugs flying out too. At least they are trapped in there for a minute. Yeah, the only bad thing about them being trapped in there for a minute though is that while they're trapped in there, they can lay the little nasty eggs in there and increase the population that is in there. So that is a negative aspect of it. Let's see. Noah Gardner says, I finally finished my chicken house. Nice. I'll post it today. Okay, I'll be looking forward to that one. LP says, Joyce White, that is so inspiring. Let's see, Leafy says, I hope the clouds don't come this way. Yeah, let's hope not, eh? Um, I don't know. I want it to rain, but not just yet because I want to reseed the backyard. I've already reseeded the front lawn, but I want to do the backyard and I want to do it before the rain comes because we haven't had any rain since, well, I can't say the winter end. Since spring started, we haven't really had any rain. We've had drizzle, but we've never really had any rain. So I'm hoping to get the yard seeded before the rain because I don't know, the rainwater seemed to do so much better than if you actually water from the top. So maybe my seeds, my grass seeds might germinate a little bit faster if it is rainwater that it gets instead of tap water. LP says maybe the fix would be to open the cover just enough to fit a vacuum hose and suck them out. That might work. LP says good work, Newark Gardner. Okay, CC says I'm transplanting my peppers and I need to sow my cucumber seeds. Oh, okay. I can't transplant anything just yet. Still too cold. I don't think even in May, at the end of May, because my last frost date is either somewhere between the 21st and the 24th of this month. But I don't think I'll be able to put out the peppers. The tomatoes, yes, but not the peppers. So I'm going to wait until the first week in June has ended and then put my peppers out. So my cucumbers, I started them around the same time that Russell said he started his a few weeks ago. And the same day that his germinated, mine did. My pumpkin, I had 2 containers with them. The ones that I got from you, the seeds that I got from you and White, those ones germinated, and my goodness, you should see the stalk of the pumpkin. They are so thick and the leaves are looking awesome. But the seeds that are harvested from the squash that I bought here, they haven't germinated yet. So I don't know what's going on with them. I know that they can take a long time to germinate sometimes, but we'll see. Yes, and my cucumbers, they germinated and they're looking quite good too. Let's see, Leafy says, all my trays are on a table outside. Okay, nice. Yeah, I'm afraid to put the stuff out because it is so windy and I don't really have a lot of space in my greenhouse to put everything in. Although I could always put them in the raised bed with the cover, but it's gonna be an hassle to get them in and out of there, especially since I'm gonna have to do that daily. Yes, because it is so windy and overcast, I don't really want to put out the plants. I put them out in the greenhouse, some of them in the greenhouse yesterday, and I left both of the doors on the greenhouse open so that the air can go through, because when I put my hand in the greenhouse, it was very hot, but I don't think my plants liked it. So next time I will just leave one door open and the other one closed. Let's see. LP says, "Oh, transplanting, yay!" Mom says, "LP, every day there is something else that comes to mind." Oh, your mind doesn't rest, does it? I blame you for that. That's where my mind came from. I can't even sleep in peace without things running through my mind that I need to be making. It's all your fault, but it still has its advantages, more advantages than disadvantages. So it's okay. Helpy says, "I've had my plants out in temporary greenhouse for a week or more now, but now we're having lows in the 30s. Oh, never mind, my dear. It will soon get to be nice temperature, and then we can all enjoy going out in the garden and sitting and working on the garden and looking at it. And if you're crazy like me, talking to it." I wonder what I would do if one of the plants decide to talk back to me. Let's see. Little piece says, "Joyce White, good for you. I admire you. A testimony to keep in moving and keeping your mind sharp." Let's see. And White says, "I transplanted my peppers too, and I covered them over at night with a fleece. I transplanted the sweet potatoes you gave me." Oh, nice. Hi, Melanie. Yeah, like my peppers, I'm going to keep my sweet potatoes until June before I transplant them, although they are desperate for a transplant at the moment, most of them. But I'm going to keep them until June just to be on the safe side, because I don't really want anything to happen to them. I've been working on them from November until now, so I can't take any chances with anything going wrong with them. Some of them are actually showing signs of stress, maybe because I have too much of them in one container. But we'll see. In no time, I'll be able to put them outdoors. I started, yes, so was that yesterday's video? I don't know, yesterday or the day before, where I showed the cool weather crops that I started. And then I said that I did not plant my pak choy. But then I was looking at the stuff that I had in that tray, and I noticed something else was missing, my romaine lettuce. And I'm going through the box with my seeds, and for the life of me, it is nowhere to be found. I just don't know where the romaine lettuce go. Everything is always in one container, but all of a sudden the romaine lettuce, and that is one that I'm definitely looking forward to growing. So if I can't find it in the next couple of days, I'm going to have to go and get some more seeds, because my garden will not be complete without the romaine lettuce in it. Let's see. Melanie says, "Raining all day here in Niagara Falls." Okay. Well, the plants will be happy even if we aren't. I've got to talk to my plants. Or who will? You're right. It will be all nice soon. But I'm so impatient. I guess we are all impatient when it comes to the gardening aspect of it. We're all impatient. Can't wait to see the plants in the ground. Can't wait to see the plants growing quite healthily. Can't wait to see them producing. And then we're happy when we see them producing. We're happy when the fruits reach maturity stage or the vegetable reach maturity stage. And then when we have to harvest, we're happy that we're going to be harvesting. But then when you look at the bare garden that's left behind when you finish harvesting, you're like, oh no. Leafy Wiggy says, my prize sunflower is almost 2 feet tall now. Holy moly. What are you feeding that plant? When did you start it? Let's see. And White says, I will do your challenge with my Scotch bonnet pepper seeds, but in June. Oh, you mean the compost versus castings challenge? Okay. LP says, Leafy Wiggy, good growing. Okay, you talk to your plants too, Melanie. Yes, I'm glad I'm not the only crazy one. Uh, I found pineapple mint on sale at the store today. Oh my goodness, that is exciting. My single seed challenge squash will not germinate. Huh, wins and losses. I'll keep trying. Okay, yeah, sorry about that. But pineapple mint, I would really, really love to get my hands on some of those pineapple and the chocolate mint. But I don't know where to source it. I'm wondering if maybe I might need to buy seeds online, but I don't know where to go online to find it, especially in my region, because I'd rather get seeds that are close by, since as they would be more suited to grow in my little short growing season. But yes, I would like to get my hands on some of those chocolate and pineapple mint. Little pieces, bare ground mean more stuff. New York Garden says, Leafy Wiggy, good for you. I hope it grows and grows. Started late March and it's 2 feet already? Wow, you're not wasting time, are you? Fed Gaia Green, dry amendments. Okay, never heard of that. Interesting. Should look it up. Oh, you find your pineapple mint at Lowe's. I don't go to Lowe's much. I'd have to go there and check out their garden section to see what they have if they have it there. It's the best organic amendment in Canada. Oh, interesting. Definitely have to look it up. What makes it the best? Yeah, I'm definitely going to look it up. It sounds interesting. Although you know I'm frugal, I don't really buy stuff that I don't have to buy. Yeah. Okay. So I guess my daughter is gonna want to come back in here for school in the next minute. So if you guys don't have anything that you would like to discuss, then I am going to say goodbye. Let's see. LP says they have some plants, three for $10. Okay. So I got the pineapple and two strawberry plants. I wasn't I was not planning to buy plants. Oops. Isn't that always the case? We never really plan to buy a lot of the things for our gardens that we do, but somehow once we go there and we see it, we buy it. And sometimes we don't even have the space to put more stuff, but we see it and we're like, how can we pass this by? Yes. LP says, thanks for a nice chat and giving us all a place to talk worms and gardening. Have a great day and weekend. Same to you, my dear. Same to you. Melanie says, I was out in my backyard with an umbrella today. You can't afford to not be looking at the plants. So even if it is raining, you're under your umbrella looking at the plants, eh? My neighbors must think I'm crazy, but I just couldn't resist. Yes, I know the feeling. I know the feeling. Exactly. I could not get peppermint. I couldn't not get the pineapple mint. So okay. I will bring you a sample when I get worms next. Okay, Leafy Wiggy. Take care, Russell. Bye, everyone. Thank you all for being a part of this lively discussion. I truly enjoyed it and appreciate you being here. And I hope you all have a safe and wonderful weekend and enjoy growing your beautiful gardens. Take care, Han White. I will see you guys on Monday.